Well, hello everybody, and welcome here to the pilot show of a new racing broadcast here on DPPG. I guess we're going to name it Racing Hotspot, kind of a testament back to where I came from. Devin Podlesny, Jordan Jenkins, we're your hosts. Going to see how this goes. Jordan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So we're recording here on February 4th, the day after the Busch Light Clash at the Coliseum for NASCAR. Originally, that race was supposed to take place tonight, February 4th, but because of the crazy weather happening in LA, NASCAR made an audible type, or not an audible. Is it an audible call?
Yeah, I would call it an audible.
An audible call.
An audible that NASCAR has never done before, too.
That's true. They've always moved like a race back. One of the races being the one we went to in Loudon, where Sunday morning they said, "Oh, no, we're just going to run tomorrow." But they've never moved it up. Said, "Hey, instead of tomorrow, we're just going to run it tonight," which is insane.
And they made that decision 4 hours before the race was supposed to be at.
Yeah, that's
We announced at like 3:30, 4 o'clock yesterday, saying, "Oh, we're going tonight at 8."
That's insane. Like, I can only imagine if you're in the LA area now. Granted, you and I would have been the ones at practice anyways, so it wouldn't have necessarily adjusted anything on our schedule. But I mean, knowing my family, if we went, they would have said, "Oh, well, yesterday's just practice and qualifying. We'll go on Sunday, but we'll go explore Hollywood or something on Saturday." And then all of a sudden, nope, we're racing.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Now, they said that they they estimate about 20 to 30,000 people were there. And honestly, I know a lot of people last night on social media and Twitter and Facebook and everybody everywhere was saying, "Oh, well, look at the poor crowd. Look at the poor crowd." But as you said, that was a 4-hour notice.
Yeah, especially, I mean, yeah, you can add in the factor that the clash became a free race pretty much, because obviously the practice and the heat races were supposed to be free anyway on Saturday, with the only paid ticket being for today. But, I mean, I'd say it's a solid crowd turnout for a 4-hour notice.
I was gonna, yeah,
20 to 30,000.
Yeah, I mean, and the art of again, people are saying, "Oh, well, it looked bad." Well, how many seats does the Coliseum actually have? Like it's gonna look bad if you put 30,000 people in a 400,000 people stadium. Not necessarily that the Coliseum has that, but like Indianapolis, they've had races there where it's 400,000 people. If you only put 30,000 people in it, then it looks bad.
The Coliseum's capacity is 77,500.
Okay, so you have a little under, if I'm doing my math correctly, a little under the 50%, like probably 35, 40% at capacity. Again, for a 4-hour notice, that's not bad. That's really not bad.
Not.
No, I mean, it's yeah. I don't know. I understand where NASCAR's coming from, and I think that what they did was the right call, because I mean, I'm not in LA right now. We're both in New Hampshire on the other side of the country, but the weather, if it is as bad as they said it was gonna be, I mean, I don't know what type of drainage they've put in that track. Does the water have a place to go? The degrees in the bankings is 2.5 degrees, but it's still angled up a little bit, so all the water from the corner.
It rained. So it rained Friday in that area, and Bob Parker's actually said it drained pretty good.
Okay.
But apparently today in LA, it's supposed to rain all day and not stop. Like, it started raining last night. I don't think it's supposed to stop until Tuesday morning.
Jeez. I mean, and any good drainage situation is good until it isn't, if that makes sense. I thought I saw something about double-digit inches of water possibly coming for them, rain amounts. I mean, I don't know how accurate that is, but either way, it was supposed to be a lot of rain, and it doesn't matter if you have, an aqueduct that wide for water to go down. It's going to flood, and you don't want drivers and crew members and safety officials in your infield, and then all of a sudden a freak flash flood type rain cell comes across, and now you have people tripping and trying to get out of the water, and all of a sudden now is there potential somebody just drowned, things like that. Like, and I don't know what the outside of the Coliseum looks like for the fan side of things. Like, I don't know if the fans got caught in the rain, if it was going to be like a huge safety issue, but they were citing that as a main reason to move the race up 24 hours was a safety issue.
And I actually looking at the Los Angeles weather right now, it's a 70% chance of rain from now until Tuesday afternoon.
Jeez. Now, I did.
They're getting LA's getting 2 inches of rain today, 3 inches tomorrow, and then another inch on Tuesday.
So that's 6 inches total, roughly, across the next 3 days.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that I saw the people on social media, of course. I made a bag of popcorn and opened up Twitter. But the people on social media were like, well, they don't race at Daytona for 2 weeks. So why couldn't we run on Wednesday? Why couldn't we run on Thursday? And I guess, we never got an official type statement from NASCAR saying, well, it's because of X, Y, and Z. But just from the surface things, one, the whole circus that is NASCAR now has to pack up and move across country. And I mean, it doesn't take 2 weeks to do that, but if you don't want to make it so that, oh well, everybody's planning on a 2 week quote unquote vacation, and then all of a sudden it's like, nope, just kidding, it's going to be 5 days. But more importantly, I mean, again, I've never been out to the Coliseum. I've been to LA once, but I was like 8 years old. You're dealing with a city. Their cup cars and the trucks and the garage area is in a parking lot, and the cup cars are driving on a city street. I think they went past like a Waffle House, it's in the middle of the city, or not in the middle of it, but in the outskirts of one of the side parts of LA. You can't just say, hey, 9 to 5 is Monday through Friday. This road's going to be closed till Thursday. Like, that's people commute.
You can't.
Yeah,
exactly. And I think that's what the main reason was, because obviously the LA Coliseum is a small infield, so you can't fit all the cars in there.
Right. Exactly. Like, you had to, like, the way NASCAR did it, in my opinion, like the setup of the Coliseum is brilliant. You have your stadium, you have the racetrack, and then you enter through the tunnel, just like any football stadium has. Stadium, not just football, but stadium has. And then they, had them set up down the road in one of the parking lots, like good security, good everything. But it's one of those things that you can't just necessarily say, well, we're just going to close this. And I know that, what is it, the USC? No, that's not right. University of Southern California, right? They call that. They call that stadium home. I don't know how far or how close it is to the campus itself. Like, I don't know if it's technically considered college campus, so in theory they could close it down for a little bit longer. But either way, it's kind of like the Chicago street course. Regardless of if you're running in the park or you're running in downtown, the plan with the city was, from this time to this time, we're going to do this. This is what's going to happen here, and that's the plan. Now, they could make adjustments, of course. Things happen. But at the same time, it's, you're looking at days, not just Monday morning.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I get where people are, I get where people are coming from, where it's like, well, we planned on Sunday. Sure. Like, one of my crazy ideas to going to LA was to fly in last night after a game we covered here on DPPG, and then be able to, come in early today, Sunday morning, and go to the race Sunday night. Had that happened, which, I mean, it was, again, a very long shot, but had that happened, I would have been on the outskirts looking in, on the outside looking in. The positive to this, though, is that NASCAR already came out and said everybody who bought tickets for Sunday, there's a refund. I don't. You might know this. I don't know for sure. Is it 100% refund or partial refund or
100% refund?
100% refund, which is amazing. Great job by NASCAR to say, look, sorry, we messed up, or we didn't mess up. We're making a change that's going to work for some people, but not everybody. We're gonna make this right with you. I mean, and the people who were around the racetrack last night, if they paid for a Sunday ticket, they got to see a free race.
Yeah, exactly. You
And
didn't
they're
have to pay.
getting
And the
refunded.
people that weren't planning on probably going to the Clash, but probably the practice and the heat races on Saturday got a free race as well. They're like, oh, well, might as well stay now.
Yeah, we're already here. The meter's already running on the parking spot. I mean, yeah, and I'm curious to see in the coming days how people's experiences were, because I texted you yesterday from Bob Pockris. He had tweeted that, hey, there's going to be limited services, things like that, which is expected when you're moving an event up a day. Um, but am interested to see what was it. Obviously there's going to be limited services. I read something online last night that said, actually I tagged you in it. It was some people stood in line for a while to get concessions and things like that. I'm interested to see what that environment was like. Was it people just creating chaos, or was it a situation where they were very understanding and they were like, okay, you know what, this is understandable. I'm
Right.
curious, and I don't know if we'll ever find that out.
Right.
We weren't there. We don't necessarily have friends who went there. It's not like we can call our buddy and say, hey, how was the race? But it definitely is. It's something to think about. Limited services. They mentioned something about merchandise being limited. So it's like, well, what is limited? What's your definition of limited? They plan to have people in the stands. They plan to have, people there. So that would mean that to an extent, you're going to have some concessions open. Were the merchandise haulers open? Or were they only going to be open on Sunday?
Right.
Did they make that adjustment? I know most of those merchandise haulers are staffed by, usually, there are some additional staff, but the two main people running it are the ones who drive the truck. So, or at least that's some of the conversations I had in Loudon last year where, because I said, well, to them, what's your thoughts on a Monday race? And they're like, we're here anyways, we drive the truck. Oh, okay. So did those people just turn around and come to the racetrack if they weren't planning to be open? I would assume they were going to be open anyways. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that the people who are upset and complaining about the situation, I get it. But at the same time, I think everybody involved at the higher levels made it work, right?
I agree.
Fox was able to make the adjustments to their programming schedule. It went for, instead of Fox, it was on Fox Sports 1, but we were going to have racing on Fox Sports 1 anyways, Saturday night. So they were able to push that TV window out. It was of the quote unquote bad situation, there was a lot of good that came from it.
I agree.
I mean, we got the race in. We'll talk about the race obviously in a minute. But I mean, we got the race in. They got the Mexico race in, which unfortunately I didn't catch any of. But
not either.
From what I've seen online, like clips, it looked like a good race there.
Yeah, a lot of people said it was actually better than. I've seen people say on Twitter that it was actually better than the actual Clash itself.
I mean, those cars are, if I'm not mistaken, those cars are designed for, your road courses and your short tracks.
Yeah, I do know though that the Mexico Series cars are 5/10 slower than the Cup cars.
Huh. Interesting. I would love to know, and I didn't look it up obviously, and I don't know if I can find it quickly here, but I would love to know, do the Mexico cars have more horsepower than the Cup cars? And it's like there's something that's like a restrictor plate type deal. Like I'd love to compare the two in specs, but I would assume it's probably something similar to like the late models that NASCAR have run in the past. At least that's what they looked like online from what I saw.
Right.
So I don't know. I think I understand where people are. They plan for this and this happened instead. I mean, it's Sunday the 4th, and I'm sitting around with no sports to watch. the
So
first,
I just
Go ahead.
so I just researched it. The NASCAR Mexico Series is a couple of the U.S. Cup and Xfinity Series with cars that have lower horsepower, less technology, and most importantly, less cost to run and operate.
Interesting. So they're lower horsepower, lower in technology, so they're simpler in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, with the lower horsepower and lower technology, that equals less cost.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yes.
And here we are listening to all these people say we need more horsepower and we need more of this, we need more of that. When in reality, maybe we don't. I don't know. I'm
That's gonna be the debate all NASCAR season long this year.
Every time we listen to one of the racing shows, whether it be a podcast or a broadcast, there's always somebody who says, "Well, we need." I don't
And it
know.
kind of all started, and it kind of all, I mean, it's been a debate for a couple of years now, I would say, for the horsepower thing.
Mm.
But I think it really became a big discussion when Danny Hamlin went on his Actions Detrimental podcast and said the same thing, that the cars need more horsepower, and that's when the whole more horsepower movement kind of started, like became big.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you on that. Yeah, he kind of came out and was just like, I think, yeah, he came out and said it, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And I think that's a great example of the important voices in the sport. Not to
Mhm.
kind of get sidetracked here, but you love him, you hate him. I don't know how you feel about Denny Hamlin. I know you're a fan of Denny Hamlin. My dad's a fan of Denny Hamlin. I have no issues with Denny Hamlin. Um, I mean, I'm a Chase Elliott fan, so that's a little weird to say. But I mean, I grew up being a Tony Stewart fan who was Denny Hamlin's teammate for the longest time. So like, I have no issues with Denny Hamlin. Some people just don't like him at all.
Well, the thing is, you say, "Oh, I grew up a Tony Stewart fan," and then I didn't have a problem with Denny Hamlin because he was Denny Hamlin's teammate for the longest time. But Denny Hamlin's raced for Joe Gibbs Racing for actually his whole Cup career.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah, his whole Cup career.
he's been in that 11 car, and one person. Well, I've been a Denny Hamlin fan since 2016. So he won the year he won his first Daytona 500 because I was a Jeff Gordon fan, and obviously he retired in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed to find a new driver, and so I just picked Denny Hamlin. And the person I've hated for the longest time, I don't really much now ever since the move because he's kind of changed a little bit, was Kyle Busch,
Hmm.
who was Denny Hamlin's teammate for what, 16 years?
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, I personally had no issue as a Tony Stewart fan. I had no issue with Denny Hamlin, and I think that probably came down to the fact that Hamlin, in those years, was very cool, calm, collected, kind of kept to himself. Went out, ran his race. If he was going, it was during a time where if he was going to win, it was because his car was a couple tenths faster than the rest of the field.
It was kind of just like yesterday at the Clash we saw it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think his qualifying lap to put him on the pole was like almost 2/10 quicker than what Logano ran for second.
That's insane. Let me see if I can find that out real quick. Hang on. Qualifying results. Want to say using racingreference.info for this information. Just want to give them a quick little plug here. All right, they don't have the qualifying results. Maybe we'll go to NASCAR.com. They got to have the qualifying results, right?
I mean, they do, but I'm looking at on the NASCAR app and they don't have the times.
Interesting.
They have the practice 1 results. They don't have the qualifying results.
Well, because they only ran. Oh wait, I see what you're saying.
I mean, it looks to me. Oh, they're a little bit different. Not much though. Like the top 10 was the same from the first practice to qualifying.
Gotcha.
And in practice 1, Denny Hamlin was a little over a 10th quicker than Logano.
I'm going back to we started this point with Denny, because we'll talk about the race here in a minute. You know, important voices in the sport. That's where I was going with this. You know, you love him, you hate him. I don't care how you feel about Denny Hamlin. He has become a voice in the sport where when he speaks, we listen. Whether you hate him or you love him.
Yeah, whether it's to see, oh, what does this guy have to say now, or if it's like, oh, let's see what
yeah,
what controversy he spurs up now.
Exactly. Whether or not it's, oh, what's he have to say, or ugh, what the heck does this guy have to say? It doesn't matter. You're still listening. You know, it's the same thing with whether or not you cheer or you boo. You're still making the effort to acknowledge him. You know, and anyways, so he's become one of those voices in the sport, and I think that comes down to like what you said with. Now he comes out, he starts Actions Detrimental, which I have to say, I love that podcast. When I have an opportunity to listen to it, you know, I'm listening to it because it's just driver insight that we're all getting. I mean, and according to the Netflix series, other drivers listen to it as well, which is awesome. Cool to see like their competitors on the track, but off the track they support each other and they want to see what everybody else is saying. But he comes out, he starts that podcast, which is great. It's fine. And then all of a sudden now people hear him outside of the race car and they're like, oh, we follow him now. We listen to him now. So he comes out and says, I think we need more horsepower. And then all of a sudden everybody else is like, yeah, we agree.
Yeah.
We're with him. So I've never raced cars other than on the Xbox. So I don't know, you know, when that debate comes up and somebody says, oh, do you think they need more horsepower? It's like, I don't know. I mean,
I think it's kind of because obviously as big NASCAR fans as we are, we've seen different generations of cars that NASCAR switches up. I think one of the most, I want to say, controversial topics in NASCAR, even though it's not really controversial, is the next gen car.
Yeah.
I mean, the first year was last year. The second year. The first year was in 2022 with the next gen car.
Wow.
And obviously they had a lot of issues because like it caused the end of Kurt Busch's career in his crash at Pocono because the back end of his car hit and the car like didn't eat any of the impact.
Right.
So they had to make an adjustment last year to it, but I just feel
same thing with
I just feel like it's like I feel like a lot of things on the car break a lot more like easier too. Like Chase Elliott had a problem with his car. Todd Gilliland's brakes broke or stopped working within like 50 laps of the race.
That was interesting. But no, I mean, I agree with you. I think that last year was the first year that we kind of had a good feeling about the new car. You know, in 2022, it was kind of like, all right, let's go. Like, this is cool. And then all the issues started, like, I don't want to say issues, but the things started surfacing. You know, like,
because the thing with 2023 was last season was we've seen the next gen car on every track at that point. 2022 was they're coming to New Hampshire. This is the first time the next gen car's in New Hampshire.
Yeah, let's
How
see
is
see how it
the next
reacts.
gen car? How is New Hampshire going to treat that car? Oh, they're in Richmond, first time here. And one of the things that I think has changed with the next gen car, and that is it's a very much talked about topic, is the short track package.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That is, I mean, we talk. I mean, like New Hampshire's, I kind of put under that because it kind of works like a short track, even though it's a mile long, but it's flat, so it ultimately is pretty much a short track.
Yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
obviously Richmond is a short track. Bristol, but Bristol is always Bristol anyway.
Bristol's its own thing. it, it's like it's like the sub note or sub def or subcategory of short track. It's like short track and then Bristol.
Bristol.
But no, I mean I agree with what you're saying. Like it was so funny for me how with the Gen 6 car that came out in 2013, short tracks, super speedways, road courses, kind of they were all good. You had situations where it was like, all right, this is a good race. You know, short tracks, not bad. Then the mile and a half program was what lacked. And everyone was like, these cookie cutter tracks are horrendous. We should change them for road courses. We should change them for short tracks. We should change them for this. So then NASCAR comes out and starts developing this new car, which I'll go back to the development side of it in a minute. They start developing this new car, and then all of a sudden it hits, I can't say Atlanta because Atlanta's basically a super speedway now, but it hits like the Kansases and the Charlottes and the Texases and everything, and people are like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. But then it hits the Bristol, or, well, sure, the Bristols, the Martinsvilles, the Richmonds, the New Hampshires, the Phoenixes, and everyone's like, what? Then it goes to the road courses, which it's like, wait a minute, why is this car like we were good and then now we're not, but we're good here. Like it was like there was a trade off. Like we couldn't balance it. It was either this or that.
Right.
The only product that stayed the same was super speedway racing, and that's just because super speedway racing is super speedway racing.
Right. And
Like
no one's got to worry about super speedway racing that because obviously that's Daytona, Talladega, and I guess now Atlanta. And I mean, would you consider Nashville super speedway? I know it's called a super speedway, but
no, I consider Nashville a cookie cutter. You have to lift
yeah,
out of the corners, so
yeah,
um, but no, I mean it's just crazy in that sense where like I said, where you have one that worked, then we had this new car and it like switched. And it was like, wait, I don't know. But going back to the development of the cars, I think one of the things that people need to acknowledge at least is that that car was originally supposed to come out in what, 2020? And
yes,
then 2021 it got pushed back because of the pandemic, and then it got pushed back again. Point is they were developing this race car during a time where, hey, we need 10 people at the racetrack. Well, they're only going to allow 5.
yeah,
And it's like, well, how are we? Wait a minute. So like and then I remember the day that they had that crash test at Talladega, where you send the car down the straightaway and it just hits the wall. If I remember correctly, they had said that they were even short staffed on that day. So
hmm
it's like these key points in the development of a new race car does not have your full staff there because of the pandemic. So here we are. They kept pushing it back to try and make sure it was developed correctly. And even when they did multi-car testing, it was still, well, we can have 5 drivers, but they can only bring 3 people per driver because of the amount of people we can have in the garage area.
right,
So it's like, wait a minute, what? Like you're trying to make these decisions, and it was just kind of, I don't want to say it was rushed because obviously they kept pushing it back to try and make it better, which is fine. But then you have, like I said, you were producing a race car during a time where it was just unprecedented for one, but also it was very limited. You were working inside the box.
mm
So you have then 2022 comes out, and unfortunately Kurt Busch gets hurt, which then ultimately, like, it led to him retiring. Obviously in the beginning it was okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna recover. I'll be back. I'll be back. I'll be back. And then okay, I'll be back. I'll be back. We're gonna have somebody else drive long term though. I'll be back. And then it led to him retiring. So we have that accident. We have, fires with the exhausts, rubber buildup and everything.
And Kevin Harvick had that problem in 2022. I think I forget what track
I
he
think it was
did. It was
Darlington.
happened at.
I think it was
Oh man, I think it
Darlington.
was Darlington.
But
And
yeah,
that's when Harvick was like, and that's when Harvick really ripped into the next gen car because it was like I didn't do anything, and here I am like out of the race because my car just caught on fire.
right. Like just out of the blue. Like just yeah. It's like things like that. Unfortunately, like let me phrase that. Things like that you learn from having 10 cars show up and go run a 400-mile race on a random Tuesday. Or not 400 miles, but you know what I mean. Like you run those extended tests. Those are the things you learn. And when you're restricted by pandemic rules, you can't necessarily go and do those things, and it results in then the Southern 500, Kevin Harvick's car just bursting into flames.
Right.
So I was happy last year between 2022 to 2023. I was happy to see them make adjustments, by cutting into the frame and stuff. This way the car kind of crunched more. And then and you knew that NASCAR felt satisfied with what they had because then this year from 23 to 24, they went back to projects they originally were going to do 22 to 23, which were like the mufflers and things like that. So you knew that they felt satisfied, and obviously if they feel satisfied, there's a good chance that the drivers and teams and everybody involved were satisfied as well.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think the new car is. I think it's good. I think that the technology side of it is good. It's next level type deal. Definitely showed that they have ownership of IMSA with like the rear camera and everything. But like, I don't know. I think the new car is good. I mean, I will say that even the Gen 6 car, when it came out in 2013, it was the first 2 or 3 years. It was like, this is the worst thing ever. The
Right.
what was it, Gen 4 or 5? It was the COT, the car of tomorrow.
Yeah.
That car went through, what, 5 different changes in like a 10-year span?
Yeah.
We
About
came
that, yeah.
we came out with the splitters being all like squared off and the wings and everything, and then it was now we're just gonna have a spoiler, and then they rounded off the front splitter this way you can't really like the air just goes around it, and it was like every year. I mean, for somebody who collected a little diecast as a 10-year-old, every year I had to buy 40 new race cars.
You still do that.
Yeah, I mean, I still do that, but I just do the big 124 scale now. Um, but it's just crazy. Like my point is, I guess, is it's not crazy. It's just that happens. You have a new product go out, and then you make modifications, and yeah. So I don't know, but let's move on to talking about the race itself. So Denny Hamlin gets on the pole. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Goes out and wins the race. Now, before anybody out there who might not have seen the race says, "Oh, so it was a blowout like Martin Truex did to New Hampshire last year," no, there were a total of 7 lead changes.
Yeah.
Between Logano, Hamlin, Gibbs, Keselowski.
Did Keselowski lead?
According to this, he led 1 lap. But for the most part, he had 7 lead changes. For the most part, again, between 3 drivers: Logano, Hamlin, and Gibbs. Keselowski might have gotten the wave around lucky dog type deal where he led a lap and then pitted. That was on lap 71. It says here. So
yeah,
but 3 drivers. The 3 drivers that led. I can't see where their starting positions are. So you know, Gibbs leads 84, Hamlin leads 58, Logano led 8, and then Keselowski
Mhm.
led 1. But those three drivers, they go out, and it was a Joe Gibbs dominated race. You know,
Yeah,
Hamlin started out.
even
Go ahead.
it was gonna look like that even from all the both practice all three practice sessions and the qualifying. It was JGR, and even the new Fox analyst Kevin Harvick even said it.
Yeah.
Who I think, well, I mean, obviously he's done it before because obviously Fox does a Xfinity Series race with having a cup guy go into the
Mm-hmm.
booth, and Harvick's been one of those guys. But who, off topic, real quick, I do think Harvick did really good. I think he helped Mike Joy and Clint Boyer out a lot,
No, I
especially for
think
someone who just came out of the series just last year.
it was a very, very good addition. You know, Clint
Mhm.
Boyer's been doing a good job there. Like he had his transition years, and he's become solid and comfortable. Of course, Mike Joy's been doing it for decades now. But you know, yeah, usually when you have a new guy come on, you're kind of concerned. Like it's like, well, how are they going to do? But I think Fox and even I think NBC's doing it too, where they'll have the Xfinity race, and hey, we have a guest analyst today. It's Ryan Blaney. Hey, it's so and so.
Mhm.
It's kind of like for the us fans, it's like super cool because now I'm hearing, you know, kind of going back to that podcast with Hamlin, you know, I'm hearing the driver outside of the car. You know, like now I'm watching an
Mhm.
Xfinity race and I'm hearing Harvick and I'm like, that's my guy. You know, I cheer him on
Yeah.
Sundays and I get to listen to him or be an analyst and wow, he is smart or wow, he what? Um, but like I think it's great for NBC and Fox to be doing that because it's also like an audition. You know, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, hey, we're gonna have you do a couple races. You're gonna get an idea of how we work here, and when you retire, we're gonna offer you a contract if you want to do it.
Yeah.
But he did a great job.
But yeah, those three practice sessions and the qualifying sessions, Harvick was talking about it, how just the Toyotas looked really good, even the 2311 of cars of Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick. It was just something with Toyotas
Yeah.
that they just looked really good at, which they, I mean, I know Truex won it last year, and I think he was on the pole for it last year.
Hmm.
But even then, I don't think the Toyotas were that dominant during the Classic. Ty Gibbs, I actually thought was going to win the Clash for a minute.
No, I
When Hamlin kind of got bumped down all the way down to seventh, I'm like, it looks like it's going to be Ty Gibbs' race because he was almost a half a front stretch in front of Logano for the longest time during that race.
I mean, and even in traffic, he was working traffic better than everybody else too. So I agree with you. Like there was a point last night where I was like, this is it. This is Gibbs's race. And I think it was Gibbs's race until the the caution around lap one. What was it? Lap 40. About 10 to go. 140. You had 40. That was McDowell and Chastain. They had an accident in
Yeah,
turn 3. Um, I think that if that accident didn't come out or that caution didn't come out, we're sitting here talking about Ty Gibbs winning the Clash
yeah,
because then on that restart they I think what was it, Logano got pushed up or something, like they went into each other, then Hamlin snuck by. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but that
yeah.
re
That's
that
it was like right on the restart. It was like on one of the. It was like the first. It was like either in turn one or turn two. It happened where Gibbs was aggressive and he pushed Logano up almost into the wall, and it kind of slowed Gibbs down a little bit, and it caused Hamlin to go right by.
right, exactly. So you have this accident or not accident, but you have the caution that leads to a restart. That contact happens on the restart, and there goes Hamlin. Now,
Hmm.
Hamlin locks up the tire, and then for the next 10 laps, he just continuously locked up that tire. Um, and unfortunately, I think that could be the start of the talking point of you can't pass in at the Coliseum. Um,
Yeah.
but we'll get to that in a minute. Um, but I think, from that point on, Hamlin gets by, Hamlin takes off. Hamlin got in my opinion, a gift by Kyle Busch, not restarting as strong as he did on that final restart in overtime.
Yeah, I was actually shocked. Speaking on that, Kyle Busch was second out on that. Was second on that caution,
Mm-hmm.
where I think it was Gibbs that went around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was Gibbs that went around,
Yep.
and I was surprised when I saw Kyle Busch choose the second row behind Hamlin.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bush was trying to do the push up in turn one type deal, and then work the bottom, but he just didn't. He didn't get the restart he wanted, and
No, but
that allows Hamlin to take off and see you later,
Hamlin
bud.
was having really good restarts too. Like when he went from seven, he went down all the way to seven. Obviously, when fan favorite Joey Logano bumped him out of the draft. He
spoken
kind
like
of lost like a few positions there.
spoken like a true Denny Hamlin fan. Go on.
And but when Logano kind of did the bump to Denny and knocked him out of the groove a little bit and knocked him down to seventh, during the cautions, because I think that happened before even their first caution happened.
Mm-hmm.
So when during those restarts, Hamlin was starting his restarts the whole race were pretty good
Right.
because he was getting like two positions. I feel like going on to the backstretch, he was already two positions from where he restarted.
Yeah. I mean, Hamlin was just strong in general yesterday, and I think you're right. I think you know, he got back a little bit, but he then just settled in and chipped away. I mean, it's the other notable drivers. Ryan Preece, he kind of finished back in the pack because of some contact towards the end there. He wound up finishing 11th, um, but he was around that point all race, but he got up to as high as fifth. But then he would fall back, and then he would come back up, and then he would fall back. And unfortunately, I think the timing of his run towards the end of the race just resulted in running out of laps when he was falling back. And I think he also might have used up his tires towards the end there too.
Yeah,
But I think people like Priest, people like Hamlin, are examples of how you can pass at the LA Coliseum.
yeah.
People like Hamlin and Kyle Busch and Ty Gibbs are examples of how you can't pass at the LA
Well,
Coliseum.
another example I'll give it though you can pass to the Clash is Ryan Blaney. Obviously,
Yes.
he almost did not make the Clash, but he got the provisional spot and started 23rd. He finished third,
Okay.
so he went 20 spots in the Clash.
Boom.
Granted, a lot of that is because of cautions, and obviously when a car's been in front of you, you're gonna get that spot. But either way, I mean, there's I think what four cautions the whole race. So
Yeah.
Blaney really showed you could pass there too.
The whole race took an hour and 8 minutes
Yeah, a lot quicker than last year's.
on a quarter mile paved oval. Brian Blaney went from 23rd to third in 150 laps, which again took about an hour. So I'm intrigued to hear if this is brought up on, Door Bumper Clear or DBC or not DBC, Action Detrimental, or any of the podcasts that you would listen to. Is this brought up as Ryan Blaney's a great example of how you can pass at the LA Coliseum? You just have to be smart. You have to be, um, you have to think through your emotions and everything, and you go from there.
Right.
So I mean, I think before I
I, d-
before I go ahead, I was gonna say before I transition,
I
go ahead.
I do get why people don't like the Clash being at the Coliseum because obviously it used to be at Daytona for the longest time,
Hmm.
and that's where a lot of people want it to go.
Right.
But I do think this was the last year at the Clash, sorry, not the last year at the Clash, but the last year at the Coliseum
I was actually
because
gonna transition to this. Yes.
NASCAR in the LA Coliseum had a 3-year deal in place to do it, and obviously this was the third year, the first year being in 2022.
Yeah, no, I was gonna transition to that question because that's on our show notes. But before I did that, I was gonna say, did you have any other final thoughts on the race itself before we talk about, is this it for LA? Do you have any final thoughts on the race itself?
I mean, it was definitely you mean like just this year, like just over like the 3 years total of it?
No, like last night. Like, we have
I
yeah, go ahead.
see. I thought it was pretty good, and the reason I say that is because last year was I felt like they were wrecking like every 2 laps.
Hmm.
And that's why I felt like the race went on for 3 hours when, again, this race last night went on for an hour and 8 minutes,
Yep.
which is including that little. Actually, was that including the race break halfway
I'm
race break
not
in
sure.
that time?
I'm not sure. It says time of race, so I don't know if that is green flag to checkered or just when cars are on the track. But either way, even if we add 10 minutes to that, it's still under an hour and a half.
Yeah, or even if that the race break's included, that's less than an hour.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, exactly.
um, I thought it was pretty good. I thought the racing was pretty good. Again, 7 lead changes in a track like that. I mean, I know it's a short track, so everyone's gonna be pretty close anyway. But last year's, I felt like wasn't really that many lead changes,
Hmm.
and it was kind of a kind of a shit show last year, as you might be able to recall.
Really? I don't remember that. Um, no, I mean, you're right. It was last year. It it was crazy. Things just kind of unraveled, I think, and
Mm,
from that point forward, it just kind of fell apart. I don't remember exactly the clash last year. I was just trying to actually find if there was information on last year's class here on racingreference.info, but I can't find it quick enough. Um, but no, I mean, I think that the clash in general at LA this year was one of the better years. Unfortunately, it was one of the better years in front of 30,000 people instead of 75,000 people. Um, but again, that goes back to what we talked about in the beginning of the show with, just NASCAR calling the audible and making it happen, instead of all of us sitting around watching it rain in LA right now. Um,
right.
but no, I mean yeah, I don't. I think overall, I think it was a good race. I think you
Yeah,
had
I think it was too.
you had your couple cautions here and there, but that's to be expected. And on this finish list, you only have 3 drivers that DNF'd: Justin Haley for an engine issue, Chase Elliott for a steering issue, and Todd Gillen for brakes. So that's 3 cars, right, going back to Charlotte that are quote unquote broken. Obviously, look to be fixed.
Mm.
Compared to, I would love to know how many cars were involved in accidents the last time we ran the Clash at Daytona. 2020? Wasn't that like the wasn't that the year that they ran basically a demolition derby, or was that 2019?
Um,
The year that Eric Jones won the race and his car looked like it was in 5 different accidents.
I think it was 2019.
Okay. Oh, because 2020, no, was 2020 the road course year?
2020, no, 2021 was the 2021 was the Daytona Road Course year.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Because they did the Daytona 500, and the week after was the road course.
No, well, I'm saying for the Clash, but yeah, because they did the Busch Clash on the road course one year, right?
I think that was 2021 too. I think.
2020. Hold on, Busch NASCAR Clash. If I can spell.
Yes, 2021 Busch Clash was on the road course at Daytona.
2021 was
Yeah,
okay. So
the
2020,
winner was the winner was Kyle Busch.
right? Because he snuck by when Elliott and Blaney got
Yeah,
into it. So in 2020, that was the year Eric Jones won, which that year was the one that Jones's car came back looking like it went to a demolition derby. It won the
I
race.
think that's just Daytona in general.
Right. No, I know. But okay, so here we go. This is, I'll cite my sources here as a good reporter would. This is from Wikipedia. Um, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars in 2020 who finished the race. Of 18, the sixth car was one lap down, Denny Hamlin, and then from seventh on back to 18th, they were all involved in an accident. Whether or not they were running, it doesn't say running, it just says accident. So 6 cars finished the race in Daytona in 2020 on the oval.
Yeah.
Whereas last night, 20 cars finished the race with 3 of them going home with some sort of broken part. So as much as people might be sitting here, and this is where I'm going to transition into last year at the Clash, or LA, do we move it? Do we go back to Daytona? As much as people are going to sit here and say, oh, well, it's a waste of money, going out and building a racetrack and tearing it up and doing this and doing that. It's a waste of money for the race teams. Maybe it is to an extent, but at the same time, 20 race cars went home last night, able to be reused. And to be honest, 23 cars went home last night being able to reused because Todd Gilliland, you can just change the brakes or switch the brakes out.
Yeah.
Chase Elliott, steering, that might be a little bit more in depth. And Justin Haley had an engine issue, so that's a big money loss. But who knows what the engine issue was?
One thing we forgot to mention about the Clash was kind of the big storyline of some of the top drivers that weren't even in the Clash yesterday.
Yeah.
Like we talked about how JGR dominated, but Christopher Bell, who's been in the championship for the last 2 years, did not make the Clash.
He did not. Yeah.
Chris Buescher did not make the Clash. Austin Dillon didn't make the Clash. Suarez didn't make the Clash.
Big names missed the Clash. And I guess the question then turns into, well, what if we, not the question, let me phrase that. The argument that some people can say is, well, if we hadn't moved it up 24 hours, they could have maybe raced their way through that LCQ or in the heat races. And sure,
right.
But at the same time, they might not have.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe they wrecked their car in the last chance qualifier, so then they don't even have a shot anyway at the Clash because they wrecked out.
Exactly. That's the way sports are. Yes, we could sit there and we could play the what if game, right? We could sit there and say, oh, well, maybe, it's only 70% chance of rain right now in LA. Maybe it's just sprinkling. We could have raced the wet weather package there. We could have been fine. Or, the other side of that is, well, we could have, it's a complete downpour, and, the what if game is, you can play it and you can drive yourself crazy playing it. What happened is 23 cars went. Those drivers you said did not make the field, which are big names because they just did not have the speed in short-term qualifying. And yeah, again, you could sit there and say, well, if we had heat races, yeah, sure, Christopher Bell probably would have raced his way back up. Daniel Suarez won the Mexico race last night, so he proved that he knew how to drive that racetrack, so he might have been able to race his way in. But you never know.
Yeah, and this year's format actually had less cars than last year. There was 27 cars in the Clash last year, only 23 this year.
Which I think is a good thing by NASCAR because they made the adjustment to saying, well, last year it seemed like there were a lot of cars on the racetrack. Let's narrow it down, which is fine. But I think go ahead.
One thing I will say is, despite how many people may or may not like the Clash at the Coliseum, we did have I guess some early feuds already.
Yes, I noticed. I mean, we had some on-track feuds. You had mentioned Stenhouse McDowell. They got into each other under caution. Chastain and Rennick got into each other after the checkered flag. And then Gibbs and Logano outside of the race car talking on the back of Gibbs's hauler. I watched the video. It didn't, it seemed like there was definitely, frustrations there. But it didn't seem as big as, it could have been.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, definitely. I think I watched the same video too. I know both drivers were interviewed, I have not watched why Logano was mad at or what Ty Gibbs had to say, but at the end, near the end of the video, you can start to hear word for word what Logano and Gibbs were saying to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And Logano was frustrated at Gibbs on that restart we talked about, which gave Denny the lead.
Mm-hmm.
Was Logano was frustrated with Gibbs because Gibbs put Logano into the wall pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Gibbs said to Logano, "You did the same thing to me." Logano said, "I didn't put you into the wall though." And then Logano said, "I will remember this." And then Ty Gibbs said, "I'm sure you will. You say that all the time." So I'd say, despite how hated the clash is, we got a feud already boiling between Ty Gibbs and Joey Logano.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that'll be interesting to follow throughout the year. See if something happens, something comes back up. Who knows? I mean, that's just, as Mike Joy would say, that's just short track Saturday night stuff. You know,
Yeah.
the only difference is that instead of the short tracks, we're going to a different venue next week or 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not going right back to the Clash or the Coliseum and running again. You know,
Yeah.
like you go to Thunder Road in Barrie, Vermont. You have that happen in the pits. Well, guess what? 7 days from now, we're gonna be right back at that
Yeah,
same
we're
pit,
gonna be right.
right back in that same pit garage, and that is what sells the tickets for the people going to the short tracks. Is that,
Mm-hmm.
well, these two got into each other last week. Are we gonna have that happen again?
Yeah, I was gonna, and the Daytona 500 sold out, so I can't say it's hot ticket now because the 500 sold out. But
True.
you got something to watch out for with Logano and Gibbs because maybe Logano might not get Gibbs back in the 500, but obviously Logano has said, I will get you back."
I mean, and I think the Bolt drivers are smart enough to acknowledge the dangers that are present with the 500 to not
Right.
wreck each other. But at the same time, both drivers are, you know, we talk about all the time with the 500 or super speedway racing in general. You know, hey, I need help. I need help, partner. I need help, partner. Well, now when Logano's coming up the lane in the bottom and he sees, you know, Gibbs jump out to form a second lane, Logano's going, nope. You
Yeah,
know, or the other
even
way
if it's
around.
2 laps to the win or one white flag and Gibbs is leading and Logano's behind him, Logano's gonna be like, "I remember what you did," and
I'm not going to push you to the win. I'm going to duck
Gibbs may
out.
not be finishing that race.
Right, exactly. Like, I mean, it's so crazy how even though it's not necessarily a short track situation where, you know, Logano could go down and clear Gibbs out, there's still well, I remember what you did. I'm not going to
Right,
help you,
exactly.
or I'm not going to push you, or you're right. I'm gonna turn you off turn 4 this way. It's a single car accident, but still, I mean, whatever, you know. Or I'm gonna push you in the corner to the point where you get loose. Like, these drivers are smart enough where they acknowledge that, well, I'm not gonna right rear hook you into the wall. Not that we should do that at any track, but I'm not gonna hit you and wreck you, but I can push you in a place where I know you're not gonna be comfortable.
Right.
So let's move on real quick here because I think we're at 1 hour here in the first show, which is great. I know we both kind of wanted to keep it under an hour and a half, so I'd say we probably have another 15, 20 minutes. Let's talk real quick about the Coliseum. You know, you mentioned 3-year deal. Are we going back? Does NASCAR say, can we get can we get one more year to retry what this weekend should have been because of what happened?
I'll say no. What I've seen a lot of people on Twitter say is the NASCAR should rotate it,
Between,
move it to a different track every year. So like maybe go to Atlanta for the class one time, go back to Daytona, do Charlotte, do. Obviously, you're gonna do a warm state at this point. You're not gonna do come to Pocono. You're not gonna come to Loudon and do it. I mean, you could, but
put the studded tires on, boys. No, I mean, it's funny that the Twitterverse is also saying that because we talked about that last night. And honestly, when the Clash the first year was a success in the sense of the event itself, you know, like I know you could sit there and say, well, the racing was boring or this happened or that happened. regardless of all that, NASCAR put a quarter-mile oval on a football field and pulled off an event, right? If you look at it from the basic event organizer point of view, as soon as that happened, I was saying from day one, move it. You just proved you can put a racetrack in a football field size environment. So now, even if it's, okay, I don't want to, I was going to say, I don't know what the logistics are to putting, like if you went into a dome, like a Minnesota or an Indianapolis where there's a roof and everything. I don't know what the logistics are with that. But I mean, you run indoor events in places like that. They run Supercross inside, Lucas Oil Stadium, which is a fully permanent roof. They do the monster trucks, things like that. But I don't know if then when you add 24 cars, if that's different. But you have plenty of open air stadiums in warmer venues, warmer climates that don't necessarily have a NASCAR race or a NASCAR track. That you could do it. Let's go to New Orleans next year. I don't know what the football stadiums around there are, but there's probably some college stadium that you could run on.
LSU.
Yep. So there you go.
It's not New Orleans. It's not in New Orleans, but it's in the same state.
Right. So, I mean, we could move it around, or what you said that you were seeing on the Twitterverse. Let's move it around to the actual established racetracks. Let's go to Daytona one year. Let's go to Homestead one year. Let's go to Atlanta one year. Let's go to Texas. Let's go run, a different version of the Charlotte Roval because there's a couple different configurations in that infield, or let's go run Sonoma right now, which is beautiful, green and awesome. It's not the June Sonoma. Let's go run Sonoma, but run a different configuration. This way, when we go back in June, it's not the same racetrack. These road courses are so adaptable in a sense. You can run different configurations and then go back a second time and it's not the same race.
Right.
But I mean, even if you have you're going to an Atlanta where you can't, change the bankings or whatever, I think you could still do that where you have a race at an Atlanta and then you go back in August or September. I don't think you should have 3 races at one track in one year, even if it's an exhibition, but I think you could rotate it through. That's what we do with other sports. This year the Super Bowl's in Las Vegas. Where is it next year? They've already made that decision. I don't know off the top of my head. But the Super Bowl moves around. The World Series moves around. They don't have one stadium that they play everything, that every year the MLB All-Star Game is here.
Right. They move it around each year.
Right. And I think this could be a discussion for another show, but do the same thing with the championship race. Don't have it at the same venue every year. Maybe have it there for 2 years, right? I get it. Yeah. Maybe the first year you have you have the championship race in Loudon. You're sitting there going, oh, that was horrible. Well, then have them come back a second year to try and polish up. But don't have it just be a residency at one venue because then it gets stale. And
right, exactly.
Then you have the situation where people are like, no, I don't want to go to that race. Yeah, Phoenix sold out 3 or 4 years in a row. Woohoo! But how long until it doesn't?
Right.
But I don't know. Again, that's a conversation for another day. I think that, I like the Clash at Daytona, but I also understand from the financial side of it where it was a craziness. And I also think it had run its course for a little bit. Do I think that it could go back? Yeah. But I personally like what you just said about rotating it back. Let's say next year we go back to Daytona, but then in 2025 we go to Texas. And then, in maybe 2026 we go back to the Coliseum, or we go to an LSU, move it around. Nothing saying you can't.
Right.
So, I don't know. That's for people who have higher salaries than us to determine.
Yep.
Any thoughts on that real quick before we switch gears and look ahead to 2 weeks from now?
I don't know. I think you hit it right on the money. I don't have any last thoughts because I kind of agree with everything that you said there.
Heck yeah. He's speechless, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be one of the few times this year he is. So let's move forward here. We got about a couple minutes left here before we wrap up things. Wednesday the 14th, we got cars on track at Daytona 500 qualifying. Watch it live on Fox Sports 1. Listen to it on SiriusXM or MRN Radio. Thursday, more cars on track. We got the ARCA Menards Series practicing, the Truck Series practicing, and then the Cup Series duels. The truck practice and the duels are all on Fox Sports 1. You can listen to the duels on MRN and SiriusXM. On Friday, qualifying for the ARCA Menard Series, no TV coverage of that. Qualifying for the Craftsman Truck Series, FS1 and MRN. Practice for the Xfinity Series, FS1 and MRN as well. Practice for the Cup Series, FS1 and MRN as well. And then 7:30 Friday night, the Fresh from Florida 250 at Daytona. It's the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series season opening race. Watch it on FS1. Listen to it on MRN and SiriusXM. Saturday the 17th, final Cup practice for the Daytona 500. You can watch it live on FS1 at 10:30 a.m. Listen to it on MRN. Xfinity Series qualifying at 11:30, FS1 and MRN. ARCA Menards 200, 1:30, FS1 and MRN. And the Xfinity race, the United Rentals 300 at 5, again, FS1 and MRN. And then on Sunday, the Super Bowl of auto racing, 2:30 p.m., February 18th, the Daytona 500 on Fox and MRN/SiriusXM. Next week, go ahead.
One thing I'm looking forward to about that Xfinity Series is obviously there's probably be another episode where we talk about it more, especially come in a couple weeks. But there's a lot of the Xfinity Series might be a fun series to watch this year. You got Sheldon Creed moving to JGR, Chandler Smith going to JGR, and of course, I mean, the person that's still talked about to this day from his win the Chicago Street Race, Shane Van Gisbergen, full-time the Xfinity Series.
That'll be exciting. I'm excited to see him. He's got to run the ARCA race, right, at Daytona to get full permission to run Xfinity. But yeah, no, we can talk about that. We're next week, no racing here for NASCAR. IndyCar doesn't start yet. Formula One doesn't start yet. Supercross, I think, is happening. So maybe we can touch on that a little bit. But what we can do is next week's show, we can kind of dive into talking more about Speed Weeks in general, or Speed 5 days. 6 days? 5 days? But we can talk about that next week, kind of dive more into that schedule and see, do some previews, do some open preview thoughts, and see what we might like, what we might not like, how we feeling about practice or qualifying for the Daytona 500 being the first time you strap into your race car and hit the Daytona Oval.
Yeah.
Let's think about that for a minute. And we've heard it from Denny Hamlin on his podcast. We heard it from other podcast platforms as well. Here we go. First time on track. You're going to drive as fast as you can to hopefully get the pole. Wait, what? Yeah, I don't know. We can talk about that next week. Before we go, Jordan, any final thoughts from the LA Coliseum or in general?
I mean, it felt great watching NASCAR again. I will say that. It's great to have race season upon us again. Obviously, it's just NASCAR right now. IndyCar doesn't start till March 10th.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know quite when Formula One starts, but
usually the following weekend, if I'm not mistaken. But I could be wrong on that.
So I'm just happy race season's back. It felt like a long off season. No, it's really like 2 months.
Right. It's funny going back to the Denny Hamlin podcast that we're giving all this free advertising to. They talked about that, what was it? I don't remember whose guests were. Jordan Balicki, and no, that's
Josh
not.
Balicki.
No, Jordan from the Athletic.
Oh yeah, or Jordan Bianchi.
That's it, and his co-host for the podcast. I'm totally blanking on his name. I am so sorry. Um, they were talking about the off season and how it didn't feel like a NASCAR off season, and I think that was as they said, and I agree with what they said. You know, a lot of the stuff we needed to figure out in the off season, we're already going.
You're looking for the name of Jared Allen.
No, it
That's the
wasn't.
co-host for Denny Hamlin.
No, it wasn't him. It's the co-host of Josh's podcast.
Jeff Gluck.
That's it. Thank you. Totally spaced that. Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi. They both have the podcast. They were on with Jared and Hamlin last week, and they were talking about how the offseason didn't really feel like an offseason, and you kind of just brought it up. And I think it was they had said, and I agreed with what they had said, was that a lot of the things that get decided in off seasons were already decided before we finished the race season. The silly season wasn't really a thing as much, I should say. It was kind of settled. The biggest news was the TV deal for next year and things like that. And then I think the thing that's next is the charter agreement with the series. And I don't know enough about that to talk about that right now. I can do some research, though. But no, I think I agree with you. Good to see cars on track. Good to be back. We're hoping here, real quick programming note, we're hoping to do this every week. The day it comes out could be Monday or Tuesday, depending on when the race is. And hopefully it'll be fun. And hopefully you guys enjoy listening to this every week. Definitely let us know if you have any feedback or anything like that. And yeah. Welcome to racing season. So I think that's going to do it, though. I think we're good. So any final thoughts from your end?
I don't really have any now, no.
Okay, cool. Well, that's going to do it for us. We'll see you all next week. But thank you, Jordan, for jumping on. And for Jordan, I'm Devin. We hope you have a great night, and we'll see you all next week here on Racing Hotspot.